nice and close up whispered for this evening's video. Over the last few weeks I have had a lot of comments, more scary stories, Reddit stories, more scary stories. Keep sending them in. I love doing them. I will always do them. And here we are with more today. So, ultimately this evening we are taking a break from the No Sleep Reddit in favour of the Let's Not Meet subreddit, which, if you don't know, are apparently true stories, true accounts from real people. So they're not as sensationalised a lot of the time, and obviously ideally not fictional, which, to be honest, I find them a lot creepier. Now, I have actually recorded this video once before to find that my Audacity had corrupted the audio completely. So I did that on my lunch break. It is now after work and I am now filming this video again, so hopefully I can maintain the same level of enthusiasm I had in the first video. But anyways, get nice and comfortable, get relaxed, and enjoy the scary stories. Our first story is titled "Man Claimed He Was From the Police." So, this is a story that pops back up in my mind from time to time. I've only told it to a few people, but I definitely feel like it deserves its place on this subreddit. It's for sure one of the scariest moments I've ever had as a child. Back when I was around 10 years old, my mum finally decided that it was time for her to start taking her driver's license. When she began taking lessons, she was struggling a lot. For that reason, my dad decided that he wanted to do some practice with her, on top of the official driving lesson she was having with an instructor, just to make sure she'd pass the upcoming test first try. My little brother and I were attending swimming lessons at this nearby university at the time. Behind a forested area near the university lay this huge student parking area, surrounded by trees which turned out to be basically empty every weekend. My dad saw the opportunity to take my mum here to drive around for a bit, and brought my little brother and I with them since we were too young to stay home alone. We brought a football with us. When we arrived to the parking lot later on in the evening, my parents began their practice. My little brother and I quickly got bored though and asked if we could go over to this little grass field on the side of the parking lot to play some football. My parents let us since they'd always be able to keep their eyes on us whilst driving around. After playing for some time, my parents ended up driving around in the other end of the parking lot. They were approximately 300 to 400 meters away from my brother and I. Suddenly, this white Toyota pulls into the parking lot. We were playing almost right at the exit/entrance. The car turns around and stops on my right side with the vehicle facing the exit. The driver rolls down his windows and presents himself as Thomas. He looked friendly, was good looking and young. My guess would be around 30. This is where things started to get weird. On the passenger seat was a woman covering her face with a newspaper. All I could see was long blonde hair. On the back seat was a baby sat in a baby chair. Thomas immediately states that he's from the police and that we have to get in the car immediately as he has to talk to us. My brother actually took 2 steps towards the vehicle, but I stuck my arm in front of his chest as I was sensing something was off. The woman was still covering her face at this point and not saying a word. Thomas then raised his voice and told us once again to get in the car, or else he would have to come out and get us. My brother and I froze out of fear. Suddenly the woman put down the newspaper, showed her face, and listen to the man. The woman looked young, pretty, and like a person who wouldn't hurt a fly. At this moment I began screaming as loud as I could. What we hadn't seen at that point was that my dad was already running as fast as he could towards us. He was coming from behind the vehicle, so we didn't see. My parents didn't have time to drive to us since the road down the parking lot was twisted all the way. When my dad heard my scream, he started yelling as loud as he could, "Hey, who the F are you? Get the F away from my children." As soon as Thomas heard my dad and realised my brother and I weren't alone, he threw his car into gear and took off as fast as he could. He most definitely looked like a person who shot himself when he saw my dad. My dad was furious and told my brother and I to hurry up back to the car. He didn't even think about calling the police at that point. He wanted to beat the guy up himself. That resulted in us driving around for the next hour trying to find him before my dad finally cooled down and decided he should probably just call the police. We never found out who these people were, but this episode taught me to never judge a book by its cover. People can be the most friendly looking people in the world and still wish evil upon you or the ones you love. I'm not sure what these people would have done to us, but I'm sure about one thing though. They definitely weren't from the police. Story number 2 is titled, "I used to follow people for work." So, I used to be a surveillance investigator for insurance claims, work injury stuff, to see if people who claimed to have been hurt at work and were collecting free money were actually injured or not. I did this full time for about 10 years. Doing a new case every few days for 10 years, you see a lot of weird stuff. For example, one time I saw drug dealers in a downtown city literally riding horseback. You see scary stuff too, obviously, if in bad neighbourhoods. Scariest encounter went down about 20 years ago. This was a case in a somewhat rural area, which were always the toughest. You get there at 6 AM to see what cars are in the vicinity, and run plates to see if they matched the person. Then mostly you watch for the registered vehicle to depart if you found one. This place had one car in the driveway with no plates, which actually was quite unusual. You were also provided an age, weight and height of the person, and in rare cases a pic. So I knew this guy was in his mid-30s, average height and weight. First day it turned out he left before I got there. Protocol is, if you can't confirm they are home by 10 AM, you literally need to knock on the door to confirm if they are home. You usually pretend to be a UPS delivery in a costume and a dollar store item in an envelope and a clipboard. Surprisingly, that works. Anyways, no one was home. Second day came back at 5 AM, and lo and behold, a second vehicle was there. A truck, also with no plates. The dude came out around 5:30 AM and left. I followed him, but he was immediately wise and knew he was being followed, which usually means they are up to no good, i.e. working while collecting insurance disability money, aka insurance fraud. I let him go while trying to be discreet about it. I came back the third day in another car, which you also sometimes had to do. This time he left again early and I successfully followed him to a farm in the neighbouring rural hills. In short, I busted his ass on video doing heavy-duty farm work for several hours. He eventually caught on and realised he was being watched. I took off from my parked position and thought there was no way he could suddenly get off his tractor, run to his truck, and get to me as there were driveways etc. between us and also a creek. Somehow, however, he was suddenly right behind me in his truck on some scary rural mountain roads. I was so scared and kept driving and somehow made it to the freeway, despite literally being lost in the mountains. On the freeway he followed me for miles and I couldn't shake him. He would pull beside me at times and flex his arm and gesture for me to pull over. The dude was actually pretty scary looking, and I had evidence on him that would cost him in more ways than one. I literally called 911 and reported a drunk driver endangering me, but was surprisingly told the officers were in between shifts and couldn't help. There was an easy pass bridge about 20 miles up if I got that far, and at first I thought I could lose him there if he didn't have the easy pass, but then realised again he had no plate, so it wouldn't matter. Anyways, after many miles I finally was able to shake him, but he remained relatively close behind. I exited the freeway and found a gas station. A cop was there and I reported this guy in his truck. The cop made a call and I didn't see this guy pull up. Shortly thereafter I gassed up my car and drove home and submitted my report. I'm sure his free insurance money ended at the very least. Scariest part actually is that I was worried this guy had my license plate and could somehow run it and locate where I lived. I began to research him online. Sometimes in that line of work you learn the potential insurance fraud of the person you are following is the least of their criminal endeavours. Well, I learned this guy was a hardcore convicted felon who had been in federal prisons and was a gang member and hard drug user and dealer. I was scared, but nothing happened over the next few years and I eventually forgot about it. But about 5 years later or so, I had a case in the same rural area again, and it reminded me of this guy. I wanted to Google him to see what the police blotters revealed about him in the last few years. I Googled him and discovered he was actually dead. I learned that a couple years prior, a few years after my incident, he had taken his girlfriend hostage with a gun, killed someone who tried to help her, then was killed himself by another person who actually saved her. I guess I don't need to worry about meeting him again. This next story is titled, I Still Don't Know What Happened on Our Annual Family Trip. This one is kinda disturbing. I don't know where else to go with this, and it still bothers me, so sorry if it isn't exactly fitting for this subreddit. This was maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I have photos on my camera still, but I haven't charged it in ages. Gave up on photography. You know how it is, so I hope that y'all will just trust me. So, we've been going on these trips as a family for a really long time now. Probably 17 years if I had to guess. I won't say where it is we go, but it's the Australian bush, just to give you an idea of the setting. Anyway, we've had a few creepy experiences, but nothing inexplicable. But this event still weirds me out, and I can't really think of anything that explains it. The year of this, my sister, cousin, dad and myself all drove up together and were the first to arrive at the house. We had to wait for my grandma to arrive with the key, so my dad sat on the deck with a beer, and my sister, cousin and I went on a little journey. The three of us made our way to a little creek not far from the house that we nicknamed Bridge to Terabithia, because of a tree that had fallen and acted as a bridge for use to get across the creek. This creek never had water in it though, and was not deep or wide. We could easily walk through it, but the tree was fun. Anyways, my cousin makes an off-the-cuff comment as we walk across this tree, asking, sort of sarcastically, "Is there something dead around here?" because of how many flies there were. Lo and behold, we get to the other side and there was something dead. We were greeted with a dead kangaroo. Nothing too jarring, I had seen plenty on the side of the road, but this one was cut clean in half. And when I say clean, photos of it. Then my cousin poked it with a stick and hundreds of flies came out. My cousin and sister kept poking it, trying to move it into the creek. But a fully grown kangaroo, even half of one, isn't exactly light. Their sticks broke, so I grabbed it by the tail and pulled into the creek so that we could bury it. But really we just covered it with sticks and flowers. We looked around up top everywhere for the second half, or a trace of what might have happened to it, but we couldn't find anything. We ended up going back down into the creek and walking through it looking for something, and what we found only made it more confusing. We found, if I'm remembering it correctly, 4 dead rabbits, but only their bottom halves, all lined up neatly along the floor of the creek until it reached thick brush that we couldn't walk through. Same thing with these rabbits though, no top halves to be found, no blood anywhere, and cut clean in half. We still go to this area every year, but I've never ever seen anything quite like this again. Sounds kind of serial killerish, or maybe like cult-like, or at the nicest option is that it's a taxidermist, maybe. Right, moving on to this story, which is titled "A Stranger Tries to Steal My Dog." This happened before Christmas 2019 when I, female, was 26, and it sticks with me to this day. I've thought about sharing this many times, but I was never sure if it was scary enough. My then boyfriend, now husband, and I decided to meet for dinner at a Christmas market here in Switzerland. He would pick up our dog from doggy daycare and I would get there after work. Some things that are good to know. At that point we'd had our dog for about a year. He's called Bean. He's a medium-sized dog, and before he came to Switzerland he was a street dog in Italy. He was about 2.5 years old at the time, and he loved and still loves to get all the attention he can get. Also, Christmas markets are incredibly busy here, especially after work. People will meet there with friends to eat dinner and drink mulled wine. When we got to this Christmas market, we realised that it was way too busy to walk through with a dog. So I sent my boyfriend off to get my favourite street food while I waited at the edge of the market with Bean. Bean loves to greet everyone who looks at him, and by that point I had gotten used to talking with strangers because my dog wanted to meet them. So I wasn't too concerned at first when a dude came up to me. Full transparency, I don't remember word for word what was said, and I'm not even sure what language this happened in. I do remember that Bean happily greeted this guy, trying to stand up against him, licking his hands. The guy asked for his name and what breed he is, and I told him that Bean is a Pinscher mix. That's when the situation started to turn. The man insisted that he must be a Basenji. How could I say he's a Pinscher? All of a sudden he switched. There's no better word to explain it. He grabbed Bean's leash and said, "I'll go now," and just tried to walk off with my dog. Thankfully, I had a firm grip on his leash. I was incredibly confused and flustered and just stammered that he can't take my dog. He got increasingly more angry with every second that I didn't let go of the leash. I loudly told him to leave me alone, and Bean started to bark at the man. I've never seen Bean this angry and scared at the same time. And thankfully the man let go of the leash and slipped into the crowd. I was left standing there dumbfounded. Bean was barking and shaking, so I shoe so it would explode when I put my heel down to get up. Now I don't know what's worse. Was it the same guy that tried to steal Bean? Or was it someone else who saw a distressed dog and thought, wow, let's scare that dog a bit more? I think the worst thing for me was that apart from that woman who warned me, no one helped me when I was harassed by a weird guy, even though I loudly told him to go away, and there were other people standing very close just watching. Bean was the one who scared off the guy in the end. Thankfully, the events of that evening had no lasting impact on Bean. He still loves to greet strangers. I still remember it and don't think I will ever forget. The next story is titled, Don't Hook Up with the Waiter. Sorry in advance, I was drunk most of the time during what happened, so I don't remember every detail. When I was 18 and freshly broken up with my way older boyfriend, I basically went crazy with dating guys. At the time I also dressed very goth, even going as far as to wear a real corset and trench coat, mostly just enjoying the attention. One particular afternoon my friend and roommate at the time decided to eat at a local Japanese restaurant, with both of us really dressed up. Our waiter was a mediocre skinny white guy who clearly was a little alternative, but it was hard to tell with the uniform. We joked about me leaving my phone number on the receipt or something, so I hyped myself up and did so. Late that night he sent me a text. We talked for a few days, never really having a right time to meet up as I worked 40 minutes away from where I lived. He mentioned the boots he wore meant a lot to him and some other odd things that just seemed like edgy jokes. One really late night coming home I was texting and driving, as any 18-year-old does, and we decided to meet up. My stupid self invited him over to my apartment, where it was just me and the roommate who had been with me before. Our other two roommates were not home. At first it was fine because I was already drunk, so I would just let him rant about whatever he wanted. He went on about his life, going to jail, medical bills, his parents, etc. Eventually he asked me if I wanted to see his tattoos, and I was like, okay. He lifted up his shirt, and not only could I see the handgun tucked in his waistband, but also his multiple badly covered up Nazi tattoos. One was even just slightly covered up with a banana. Excuse me, fine tattooist, can you cover up my swastika with one of my 5-a-day, please? I don't know what it was, but I simply decided the best way to deal with the situation was to appease him, so I went along with it casually. I don't remember exactly every detail because it was over 2 years ago and I was drunk. But he ended up pulling his gun out and putting it to my head, asking me if I was scared. I was immensely confused and tried to call his bluff, saying I wasn't, which got him to put it away for a while. When we went to hook up in my messy ass room, he pulled it on me again, saying he wanted to do it. I got mad and tried to fight him off and get it away from my head. Of course I wasn't as strong as him and he hit me in the arm with it, which, that shit hurt cause it was a nice one. When I finally got him off me, and he realised I was pissed, not scared, he started acting like a crackhead, saying I was crazy for not caring about him pulling a gun on me. He ran off, jumping the fence of the apartment complex and not even taking his car that he had came in. In the morning his car was gone and I had a large bruise from where he had hit me. While to me it is a funny story, I now realise how bad it could have ended up. So to the waiter from the Japanese restaurant, let's not meet. The summary is, tried to hook up with a waiter from a Japanese restaurant, ended up being a Nazi. was almost kidnapped as a child. Recently there was an Amber Alert and my daughter was asking me what that beeping sound was all about. For those who don't know, an Amber Alert goes out when a child is reported missing. If you receive notifications, you know what I'm talking about. The alert will sometimes give information like the victim's appearance as well as the perpetrator, the location of the abduction, make, model of vehicle, etc. My phone started beeping one evening while helping my daughter clean her room. An Amber Alert. She asked about it and I gave her a small rundown and that was that. However, it triggered a childhood memory I have where I believe with all my heart that I was almost kidnapped as a kid. To be clear, this isn't a memory that was lying dormant in my subconscious, and this random Amber Alert and talk with my kid caused it to resurface in my mind. This incident is something I've pondered and thought about off and on for years now. I'm now a 41-year-old male, by the way. It's just been a while since I've considered the factors and details of the experience, and this recent Amber Alert and talk with my daughter really caused me to pause and reflect on the incident itself once again, and here I am. As a parent, you worry about these things and do all you can to protect your children, especially when you personally experienced something truly scary like this. The occurrence happened when I was just a young kid. My guess is around 7 to 8. My parents took me to a neighbouring city to do some shopping. We lived in a small rural town with not much on offer, so from time to time we'd go to this neighbouring city about 45 minutes from where we were located. It just had more to offer. They would take me up there for school clothes shopping, out to eat because there were better restaurants, and because my mum was a crafter. She loved to make crafts, it was her thing. There were different craft stores and a fabric store she liked going to in the city. This specific trip we went to a fabric store up there, Joanne Fabrics to be exact. This was a pretty big store. As a little kid I guess most places seem big, but no kidding, this was indeed a sizable store. My dad sat out in the car while I went in with Mum. He did that a lot, sit in the car. When there was a store he just didn't want to go in, so I can't blame him there. I can't recall exactly what my mum was looking for or trying to get in that store that day, but I do remember what section we were in. An area with a bunch of racks with various fabrics hanging. Imagine a clothing store with circular racks with clothes hanging around them, and that's pretty much what it's like at this fabric store. Racks of hanging fabrics. I remember this area being slightly toward the beginning or entrance of the store. As my mum was looking through these racks, I began to wander, though not too far, just enough to kind of look around myself. I was probably bored and started wandering around is my guess. But I could still see my mum just up and over a few racks away, so it wasn't like I was on the other side of the store or anything. A random man approached me, and honestly I can't even remember what direction he came from. It's just like I was there by myself 1 minute and the next I looked up and saw this guy. It was like he came in fast and out of nowhere. I quickly looked over to where my mum was. She'd moved a few racks up and away, but I could still see her. There was a fair bit of distance between my mum and me at this point. So here I am, standing behind some rack of fabric with this older guy. Opposite me in the other side of this rack. Then he speaks. "Hey little boy, how are you doing there?" I remained silent because this took me completely off guard. He asked, "Where's your folks at? Are you alone in here?" I stood still and quiet. "Come here, I got something to show you." At this point he started advancing toward me, coming around the rack to where I was. I quickly started headed the other way, but he stopped and started coming around the other way as if to meet me in the middle. I was scared at this moment and became instantly aware that this man seemed dangerous and like he was trying to get a hold of me. "Come here," he barked. I jerked fast to the left, but he did the same. He had this wild look in his eyes. Whichever direction I went, he followed, but remember there's a rack between us. After some back and forth movements from me and this man, I finally lock in on my mum and yell, "Mum, help." You would have thought I screamed bloody murder. It was so loud, but it got my mum's attention. "What's wrong?" she asked. This startled the man, and he looked over his shoulder in the direction of my gaze and confirmed, "Yep, that must be his mother." His demeanour completely changes, as if everything is just fun and games, and he was just messing around, and he said as much to my mum. "I was just messing around with him. No harm, ma'am." My mum came to where I was. As we reconnected, the guy just tips his hat to my mum and makes his way out of the store. I explained to my mum what just happened, that this guy was trying to get me. I was so upset and shook up. She told me I did the right thing by yelling and getting her attention. It was terrifying for sure, and I'm thankful something crazy didn't happen. Could I have been imagining things like maybe this guy was really just messing around? I very much think there were nefarious intentions. Why would a random older guy be perusing a fabric store? If he was there for something like crafts or fabrics, then why probably leave when confronted? I truly believe he was up to no good. This next story is titled "The Swaying Person." Right off the bat, I'd like to say that this incident is one of the few that have truly stuck with me. Although this took place in January of the previous year, it definitely keeps me awake at night. It seems surreal to me that so many weird things happen to people on a daily basis, and I'd never imagined them happening to me. Anyways, I was staying abroad due to college, and there wasn't a single thing that had irked me or creeped me out. I lived in a relatively populated area. There were a lot of young women in my apartment, and even some older women, so you could say I definitely felt safe in my own home. Walking the streets was also safe since there were always people around. There were apartments, parks houses, those 4x 7-Elevens, and small cafes. I'm pretty sure there was a small motel too. Regardless, it creates a pretty decent image of the area. Although the university taught the lessons in English for all the foreign students, I still wanted to learn the language to respect and experience the culture. It was fun, and I made quite a few friends in those classes. Well, one day I was walking to a convenience store from the class. I remember being quite dazed and tired. It was around 8 p.m. The class ended a while back, but since I had the once-in-a-lifetime leisure time, I decided to explore the place. I knew my way around, and I was feeling pretty confident about the routes. As time passed, I walked and reached this giant road with some empty plots to the right. Don't get me wrong, it was a residential area, and I could even hear noises from a couple of houses. Now, this is where it gets a little weird. There's a bunch of houses, but as you keep walking towards the city and all the hustle and bustle, there is this entire secluded area of just road and street lights. The convenience store was like 4 kilometers away. I was feeling uncomfortable and very nervous too, because of a previous incident I had had, so I decided to stop and look around. There was nothing, but I decided to start jogging further, while looking side to side and back a little too. Not even 30 seconds passed and I bumped into someone. I felt a feeling of dread rush over me and my hair just stood up. My palms started shaking and I didn't even lift my head up to see who it was. I apologised like crazy, simultaneously backing away and getting ready to bolt out of there like I was in the Olympics or something. The person came in front of me, started walking towards me in little steps, and started moving in this weird swaying motion. It was almost like a cartoon, and while swaying, the person just said, "What the F? What are you? Are you okay?" with an arrogant tone. I say person because I genuinely couldn't tell if this person was a man or a woman. Their face was covered by a face mask and they wore a large hoodie and sweatpants. The voice was sort of muffled but didn't sound either masculine or feminine. The person started swearing and doing the weird swaying motion while reaching in their pant pocket. I saw a glimpse of something shiny and my instincts that so conveniently died out kicked in. I took the chance and fled the damn place. I went to the store and told a clerk. They called the police, who found 2 shoes on the same spot, and along with the shoes was the mask, apparently. I never found out who it was, what they wanted, and how I never saw them lurking around in the empty plots. There were no bushes and the light wasn't that scarce either, but I'm glad I'm safe. I listened to my gut feeling is the title of the next one. So this was about 5 years ago and it still creeps me out. I was 18 and female at the time. I'm now 23 and female. I was walking home from work at the local pizza joint and took my usual route home. It was about 9:45 to 10:15 PM and it was super dark. As I'm getting about 100 yards away from the street I live on, a white van turns onto that street. Nothing suspicious, but something didn't sit right with me. So I yanked out my earbuds and paused my music. I then turned down my street and as I'm getting close to the house, I started getting a weird gut feeling. I look up from my phone as I was about to text my roommate, who was out of town at the time, that I was almost home. As I look up, I notice the white van sitting in front of my house, and the man inside is just staring at me. The yellow car light shining on his face. He had brown hair, glasses, and facial hair. It's not me. His van lights were off, but his car was running. I stopped and put my back to a tree in my neighbour's yard and just stood there, maintaining eye contact with this man. After about what seemed like an eternity, he starts driving towards the stop sign at the end of the road. I didn't put my back to him. I kept my back to the tree and maintained visual on the van the entire time, until it stopped at the stop sign. He just sat there for probably 2 to 3 minutes, all while I'm not looking away and my back still on the tree. Finally he turned right, the direction in which I had come from, and after about 20 seconds of making sure anybody else wasn't coming, I bolted to my house. I quickly get inside and lock the door. I go to the window and very quietly look through the blinds. I didn't turn on any lights because I'm not stupid. After a few seconds of looking, he drove back up and down the street and left again. Afterwards I texted my roommate what happened and then went always good about locking the door once the sun goes down, but on Mum's work days she goes to the casino and comes home late, so we leave the door unlocked. I like to take advantage and sit on the couch with the place to myself. Our couch is situated right next to our door. You can always hear the door jiggle, and the door makes a particular noise when it's opened, like old swollen wood pressing and pushing on each other. This noise has always caught my attention since childhood. I hear the door open. I see it pop open thinking it's my mum. Sometimes she puts her purse down and brings groceries, so she will pop the door open and pick our stuff up and come home behind the open door. I hear the door. I look over, it's cracked like 3 to 4 inches open. I make eye contact for a second, then it slams shut once they see me. I'm kind of freaked out. Still think it could be my mum, so I lean over all clumsy like and open the door without putting myself in the doorway. I lean out, step in the doorway. I see no one, but I hear the crunch of gravel, as if someone was running away. I will admit I'm a redneck. We live in that kind of town. I slam the door real quick and run for the clock 26 in my room. Have it pointed forward and go back to the door and hit the heavy latch. I waited 30 more minutes in my living room with my gun. My mum finally pulled up and I unlocked the door for her to act like nothing happened. Potential home invader. Let's not meet. Well, there were definitely some unsettling, creepy stories in this video, so I hope you're both nicely relaxed, maybe even asleep, or you're at least entertained and scared shitless. So, I really hope you did enjoy tonight's video. As I said,